Okay, joining us now is this very special guest, Mr. Shaurya Doval, whose body of work ranges from economic development to working with startups to having a nationalist perspective towards policy advocacy and, of course, a lot more. And we'll talk about all of that. Thank you, Mr. Doval, for being here and joining us on this special segment. My first question to you, sir, I was looking at one of your interviews where you said that it's important to look at India from a unique perspective. Do you think that the world has been able to do that in the last 10 years? And how has that reflected on us as Indians?
Well, thank you, Vasudha, for having me here. And good afternoon to all the young people in this room. I'll try and answer this question as best as I can. It's a little bit complicated, so I'll try and give it a sort of simple anecdotal background to it. If you think in the world that we live in today, we all constantly are talking about artificial intelligence. And we say that in artificial intelligence, the most important thing is data. Yeah. As much the data is, as much the information is, the better the artificial intelligence, the better the outcome of the algorithm is. Think of this like for a country as well, right? India has two options. India could have either decided that India was born on 15th August 1947 and say that all of India's data and information that we can bring to our development is only 75 years old. Or we could take a different perspective and say that modern India or independent India was born on 15th August 1947, but Bharat has existed for 3,000 years. Yeah. And therefore we have data which is not only for the last 75 years, but for 3,000 years. Or probably even more. So, if we can bring that data to our policy making, to our thinking, then as an engine, we are far more sophisticated in how we tackle the problems of today.
Right.
So when we say that we have to look at India from uniquely India's perspective, what we are effectively saying is we've got to stop looking at India and thinking we are a young nation, only born on 15th August. Before that, all our information and data was irrelevant. But actually take back everything that we've got for thousands of years and bring it to our day-to-day. And this is very important for Indians to understand. It doesn't really matter how the world thinks of us. The world will think of us as how we really think of ourselves first.
Right.
And for the longest time as Indians, we thought of ourselves as a colonized nation, as a defeated nation, as a nation that was vanquished.
Right.
And so the world thought of us like that. So I think in the last 10 years, what we've tried to do is to try and take back this discourse and actually bring back to our day-to-day policy making, to day-to-day functioning of our nation, drawing down on our cumulative wisdom and experience of thousands of years as against just the last 75.
Right. I will come to that cultural revivalism in a bit, but also help us understand in the last 10 years, the Prime Minister has set a lot of targets for the nation. He talks about Amrit Kal. There's also this very ambitious target of being a developed nation by 2047, Viksit Bharat. For the youth of the country, are these merely slogans? And do you think that the government has been able to put in that kind of work to assure people of the country that we are actually forging towards those targets?
So I wish I was young and born a youth today in this country, because there can never be a better time than to be a youth in this country than today. 100 years is a very important milestone in any nation's history, because actually, and particularly a nation that has been colonized for centuries, because actually 100 years would mark us passing the risk of breaking up, fragmenting, collapsing as a nation. And we have a lot of evidence, if you look around the world, that post-colonization, if you look, most of the colonization ended 10 years after the Second World War. So from 1945 to 55, much of from Africa to Far East Asia became independent. But there is mayhem across the world. Small nations like Sri Lanka could not handle their independence. A country like Pakistan that came out of us got split into two nations. You've got Syria, you've got Africa, across the world you look, post-colonization, nations were not able to consolidate themselves. India has done a pretty good job, considering that we were 560 principalities. We were a cultural identity, but we were never a nation state, even in our history. So for 75 years, we've done a pretty good job that, today there is no risk of fragmentation of India. Right. From Tamil Nadu right up to Kashmir, there were a few pending, niggling issues that have also been sorted in the last 10 years, right? So I think for the youth of this country, having achieved this in the 75 years, giving India a peaceful, democratic republic where, you know, you can express yourself, the individual is paramount, we are now at the cusp of the next 25 years, which will transform ourselves from being a poor nation to a wealthy nation. You see, today, when we start, we are among the G20 countries. So in this world, out of 200 countries, there are 20 nations which have a GDP of over $1 trillion.
Right.
Right? There are about 16 nations. We are one of those 16 nations. When we started off in 1947, we were just a $30 billion GDP nation. So we've come about 300 times, or actually, yeah, 100 times more, because we are now we just crossed 4 trillion, so actually more than that. What we've achieved in the last 75 years, we will actually double that in the next 10.
Right.
So we'll be about approximately 8 trillion by the time 2034. And given where we are going to grow, we'll end up somewhere between 25 to about $40 trillion by 2047. Now that means that every Indian, by default, will become at least 10 times richer.
Right.
Right? So people sitting in this room, by the time, in the next 25 years, there is a huge ocean of prosperity that is going to come, which will mean upward mobility for individuals, their families, their communities. So for Indians, this is the best time to be in India, and you have to just travel the world to realize that when the rest of the world is collapsing. But the question for the youth, therefore, then, as you said, is that, you know, you have to now assume, what do you make of this?
Yeah.
And when we say about Viksit Bharat, and we talk about the Amrit Kal period, we're effectively calling on the youth of this country and saying, here is this tremendous opportunity for you to move yourselves and your families up the level of prosperity across, and therefore prepare yourselves, work towards and avail of these opportunities that the country is throwing at you. And be innovative, be creative, be a bit risk takers,
Yeah.
fail a little bit, go out there and play this game when you are young, so that when you look back and when you would find that not only have you made a huge difference to your own lives, but to the lives of this nation by your work.
Right.
So that's really, I think, why this period is very exciting, the next 25 years.
So, you know, Shaurya, there's also, from the standpoint of what is going to happen in the future, what do you think India needs to do more in terms of, intervention of technology or economic growth to help us reach there? Because I was, looking at one of your interviews where you said that it's very important to, it's important that we remain authentic. The authenticity of ideas is very important because we have to have something new to tell the world for the world to take us seriously.
You're absolutely right, Vasudha, because, you know, while there is this rosy picture that there is this great opportunity, but with every opportunity comes huge risks, right? Now, the risk for a country like India right now is that we are going to make this transition from, as I said, from a 4 trillion economy to a, 30 or a 40 trillion economy at a time when other nations are not going to help us. We have existed in a world where nations, particularly the West, had open economies. It helped nations like China, etc., rise and move along this prosperity. But we are now moving into an era where across the world is closing down, and every part of the world is trying to only focus on their insular development. So India will not have a very benign environment as it rises as economic growth. The second problem that we are facing is that we've got a huge tsunami of technology coming, which is going to make skills and education, as we've conventionally understood, very challenging in terms of job opportunities for the young people. And we have a huge problem because we have a huge youth bulge. We have 1 million young people joining the workforce every month. So that's 12 million people coming into the workforce. So how do we create employment and create opportunities for the young people? So I think while India has a tremendous opportunity, the question is India has these challenges.
Yes.
Now, India, fortunately or unfortunately, is so huge and unique that it cannot take any one model. It cannot say, well, we'll follow what Japan did or what Indonesia did or what the US did and follow it. India will have to come up with its own unique model of how to address these challenges. And India's unique model, or what we call as integrated development or integrated humanism, which says we've got to take every piece of humanity, of nature along in this development, is probably at the conceptual and theoretical level the answer to this problem. Because you cannot, whether we are looking at the SDGs, whether we're looking at issues like climate change, whether we're looking at global warming, you cannot look at a world of tomorrow where you just think about yourself. You've got to be able to carry everybody with you. So I think a lot of it becomes incumbent on the young people in this room, that how do we translate, and going back to your first question, how do we take the conventional Indian wisdom and our of the thousands of centuries of which talks about being able to, talk about this Dev Kutumbakam, which is the whole world is our village. Sarve Jana Sukhina Bhavantu. You hear these words all the time now because we're effectively, the world is realizing that this is where we need to go. But I think the world is ultimately going to look at the young people in India to be able to find practical solutions on how to address these problems.
Absolutely.
But these are the big problems that India and India's youth will face as we make this transition.
Right. Shaurya, also in the last few years, we've seen cultural revivalism of sorts. Now, there are two different viewpoints to this. If you look at the legacy of Aurangzeb, or for that matter, looking at history from a nationalist prism, there are people who say that history has to be just truth-telling. Just even if it is uncomfortable, you just show reality. That's why movies like Chhava are being made, which also have a very powerful retelling of history. There's also one side that believes that history should show tales of harmony because India is a diverse country and we need to remain united. Where are you on this debate?
Oh, there is no contradiction in what you said. I think both viewpoints are correct and have their place. I think the answer lies in a balance. As I told you, that, one of the biggest problems of colonization is that colonization doesn't end actually the day you transfer political power. India's colonization did not end on 15th August 1947. That was when the British actually left India. India's colonization has continued, or the after effects of that colonization of the mind have continued for the longest period. One of the most serious problems of colonization is that over centuries and over the way history is taught and told to successive generation, it robs you of your self-dignity and pride. That's the whole idea of colonization. You don't just colonize land, you colonize minds. And I'm not an expert on this, but I'm sure you just travel across the world, you will see this. And that remains why some of these nations that have got independence struggle with their identity, struggle with violence, struggle with peace, even for decades after the colonizers have left. Now, in India, for the longest period, we did not take pride in who we were as Indians.
Okay.
And we have a lot of things to be ashamed of over the centuries. But we have probably equal, if not far more things to be proud of over centuries of what our ancestors did. It's a choice in life. You can decide to take, and you said the rationalist will say, well, take everything. Yeah. And the answer is yes, take everything, but also take the good and not just the bad. And once you have self-pride, that's only when you become ready to do big things. I think the biggest achievement in the last 10 years is that slowly and over the time, this pride is coming back in the Indians and particularly the youth, in their self-belief that, we are not losers. We have a great future. We can do what the world can do. Probably we can do it better than the world can do. And we will go out there and play, and we'll play there to win. Now, sometimes before that pride can lead to a little bit of arrogance. It can even lead to a little bit of chest beating, right? And the critics can always pick it up and say, well, look, you're going too far. And therefore, to that extent, that argument is valid and we should take it. But the opposite should also not be true, that we can't just keep repeating and beating us, generation after generation about the bad things that we did and the ills that were in our society, and saying just because if we keep repeating them, they will go away, right? I think the answer lies in correcting what was wrong, because nothing is that good that cannot be improved. But nothing is that bad that cannot be celebrated. Right. And Indians have got to learn to celebrate their successes and live with pride. And I'm very happy that, maybe it's organic as well, but to the great extent, we are getting a lot of that back pride in each successive generation.
Right. Also, Shaurya, I wanted to understand your views on Prime Minister's recent call to involve at least 1 lakh youth in Indian politics, because a lot of us believe that that will make Indian politics more representative and democratic. But there's another view that says the dynas, or, it's a very used term these days, they also feel that there's more skin in the game, there's more political ownership, which has also become a challenge now. So there are these two viewpoints. How do you see the Prime Minister's call?
I think unlike your last question, where both sides of the argument were valid, in this side, I totally disagree. There's only one side of the argument is valid, which is what the Prime Minister is saying. Democracy is a process of involving every single person equally in the outcome, in the politics of this country, or is an equal shareholder in the welfare of this of this country. You cannot be discriminated. That is why we have universal voting on one day. We are all equals. The day we decide to go to vote, rich, poor, educated, uneducated, man, woman, South Indian, North Indian, whatever. You're all equal. We all have an equal vote and our power is equal. That's democracy. You can agree democracy is not good. You want to give educated people more right to vote. That's a separate matter. But for good or for bad, India has chosen democracy.
Yeah.
If India has chosen democracy and we are a democratic nation, then we must have all equal rights in participating in the outcome of this country. Now, as I said, in what happens is that in every situation, there are incumbents and insurgents. And incumbents create what I call the Gymkhana clubs, right? Which is you get in and keep the others out. And sometimes that progresses over generations. In every fair, you see that. You saw that in films, you saw that in sports, you see that in public life, you saw that in business. As India moves towards a meritocratic society, and India has over the 75 years, it has systematically demolished all these sort of fiefdoms and allowed talent to come in, irrespective of where they come from. Only on the basis of rising, on the basis of their hard work, their tenacity. And that is why we are slowly excelling in field after field. You know, we can't get into top engineering colleges today deciding upon who our parents are, or we cannot get in, you cannot crack the UPSC or become an army officer or join the Indian cricket team if you know somebody. You just got to be good. The last bastion, or one of the last bastions that was lying was politics. Here still this fiefdom had continued for years or for decades. So somebody would become the head of a political party just because their grandfather was or their father was. Now, when this happens, a lot of good people feel crowded out. They feel that, you know, it's not going to be an equal chance. And I think, therefore, the Prime Minister's call of bringing in a lakh people, and by the way, for those who want to understand, this is the reason why BJP is continuously dominating the political landscape of this country. Because BJP has understood pretty early that you play this game, you have to be a meritocratic team. You have to bring your best players to come and play on the field. And the other parties are still trying to grapple with the past and therefore losing every game.
Right.
Because they are not bringing their best players to play. They are bringing the father's son to play or the father's daughter to play. So I think the Prime Minister's argument that bring a lakh of people into this country, effectively saying, find the best 1 lakh politicians in this country and just induct them into the BJP and make them the BJP's playing team.
Right.
They will be so good that they will win and BJP will win.
Okay.
And I think if the other political parties would be wise, they would say Prime Minister is doing a lakh, we do 2 lakh if they want a chance. Otherwise, they can continue to sit in opposition and let the BJP win this game.
Absolutely. Shaurya, also you know, talking about fathers and sons, your father has been, part of very important intelligence missions. He, he's serving in a very important office there, Ajit Doval. Tell us what has his influence on him, on you been like, and also, has it really helped you in any ways? Because, you know, you're still not into electoral politics, so clearly he has stayed away from doing that for you. How do you see that whole dynasty argument in the case of your life?
I wish this argument was valid for me. But listen, we are all products of our families, right? We all learn from our families, the values, actually, as we become older and we ourselves become parents, we realize that, we invariably end up not learning from our parents or what they say, but actually watching and living their lives like the lives they live. And that's why I always say that, no parents tell their children to be good or bad. All children to be good. It's how they live their lives. So it's not what our parents say to, it's how they live, we end up living. So, as a son to my father, I was, the things I think, the values that he's lived in his life are the values that we inherited. We love our country. That's one thing. We love our purpose, right? We love to work for the country in whatever form we can. We like to work hard. We like to be good at what we do.
Yeah.
Probably trying to be the best at what we do.
Yes.
But and we have lots of oodles of patience.
Okay.
And we are in no hurry.
Yeah.
And we always believe in one thing, which I keep repeating, is that our calling card is what we know and not who we know.
Okay.
So I hope I can try and live some of the values that he has lived to the best extent I can, and hopefully I can give them to my children, that they continue to do the same.
So having a father like Ajit Doval was probably, it also built in some ways some pressure on you to be the best?
Well, I wouldn't say pressure or no pressure, but it obviously sets some standards, right? So you have to try. I mean, I can't expect to be a coward.
Yes.
It won't go well, or I can't be, things like that. So I don't think it's a pressure as such, but it just says that just continue to be good at what you do, and continue to work for a purpose which is bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
I think that's at one lesson that we have learned, is that, life is short.
Yeah.
If you're good, you can just be good for yourself, for your family, or you can take a cause which is bigger than yourself.
Right.
And try to contribute in whatever meaningful way, in wherever and whatever opportunity that you get. And so going back to your earlier question, I have been very lucky. For the last 15 years, I work in a system which has given me tremendous opportunity to contribute whatever I have little to contribute to nation building. I don't look at it in terms of politics or non-politics, or, because I think I already had a career. I already fortunately have a career. I came here to contribute my 2 cents to nation building, and at least in the last 15 years that I've been involved in it, I can't complain that I wasn't given enough chances or enough opportunity. So I have no regrets, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Right. My last question to you, what was that one point in your life where you felt, hum karke dikha sakte hain? What was that one turning point in life where you felt that you had to sort of change the direction of your life and do something very interesting? Or, you've been bright since, as a student, I know that. So
no, I can share it with all the youth. I mean, I must have been around I was in my early 30s. I was in London. I was a settled investment banker. My wife was a doctor. I was living the high life. I just, worked on Wall Street. I used to work for a bulge bracket bank. And then, in 2009, most of people must have been kids. This country was going through a very downturn of hope. More than, we had a government that had been extremely corrupt. And then, everybody was coming and doing whatever. We had a big terrorist attack in Bombay, and across the country there was despondency, and we all thought that in 2009 things will change. And then we had an election, and the same people who were running the country and taking it to the cleaners actually came back. And then everybody said, oh my God, nothing can change in this country. India's doomed. India's finished. India's done with. In India, nothing will change. We'll always remain a third-rate, corrupt country, and no matter what, the terrorists will keep beating us, and people will keep looting us, and scams will keep happening, and nothing can happen. Like a typical banker, I say this to people, I was living in London, I had left the country. We talk about this in the evenings, we'll have a glass of wine, we'll go back next morning, go to sleep, and go morning play golf, and keep cribbing every weekend that, So one day I just thought, yeah, this is enough. I can't keep doing this and also complaining. So let me do something. I have to do something about it. So I packed my bags, told my wife, you're going back, came back here and started a small think tank, and in more meaningful way started saying, let's do something that will change the outcome. And rest is history. But, we did some things. We worked for 5 years. We fortunately got a person to have to lead us who bought back this. And, fast forward that to 2024. Whether we agree or not, whether everything is turned out or not, at least the very fact that you're having this conference here and all these young people are looking at 2047 with hope is indicative of the fact that, the promise of tomorrow is better than our today. And I think to that extent, I never want to be in a situation where the promise of tomorrow is worse than what today is.
Right.
So I continue to work to ensure that these people have a better tomorrow than I did. And I hope that when we are gone, they'll continue to work for a better tomorrow for their kids. And this process will continue forever.
Right. You've given me the ending line. Thank you so much.
Thank
you
so much.
The promise of tomorrow is better, and possibly that's what India is looking at with a lot of hope.